Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. Hello, and welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I have an invitation for you today to start the journey of elevating and integrating a deeper inner experience into your physical yoga practice. Today, my guest is also a dear friend of mine who I am co-hosting a workshop with at the end of January 25th to the 26th in London, England at Still Point Yoga. And you can join. You can sign up and register today. The early bird price is on until November 30th. And if you'd like to join me for Mysore, I will be teaching Mysore that same week, starting on Wednesday, all the way through the weekend. I would love for you to come and practice with me in London, England at Still Point Yoga and join the workshop that Zeena Kalisperides and myself are offering. Because Zeena, like me, is also a spinal energetic practitioner. And spinal energetics, you might think is a little out there, a little woo. I've been asked a lot about it these days because it's one of the things that I love offering. I love facilitating for people both online and in person. It is so powerful. And Zeena also is so passionate about offering and facilitating spinal energetic sessions as well. And so we are collaborating and creating a workshop that is going to combine the physical practice of asana, yes, but also help you connect more deeply to your life force, access the chakras, the energy centers along your spine, and peel back the layers of yourself so that you can connect more intimately, more deeply to your subtle energy body. And we're going to explain how the practice of spinal energetics is very much related to yoga teachings and subtle anatomy, like the koshas, these layers of our subtle energy body, and how we can use our connection to these layers to truly bring healing, to release trauma, to connect more deeply to that innate inner consciousness and essence that's guiding us to our most full, most highest, most integrated self. We're going to look at the internal and external limbs of yoga and how to live your practice more deeply in a more integrated way. I'm so excited for this workshop. And today, Zeena and I are talking about what is spinal energetics, how it relates to the Ashtanga yoga practice, what's similar, what's different, how it can help you to experience your body and your energy and your breath and even your asana practice more deeply. We're getting into it today, all things spinal energetics and Ashtanga yoga together. I cannot wait to get into this conversation and share with you one of the things I'm most passionate about right now. And Zeena is also incredibly fired up about the profound effects and healing benefits that spinal energetics brings to ourselves and to our clients and our students. And we are both super stoked to be able to share this combination of asana, Ashtanga yoga, philosophy, and teachings with the experience of breathwork and spinal energetics with you at the end of January in person at Still Point Yoga in London at London Bridge. So, without any more delay, let's get into this incredible conversation with Zeena Kalisperides. Welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm your host, Harmony, and today I'm connecting with beautiful Zeena. Hello, Zeena, over in England.
Hi, Harmony. How are you?
Good. Sunny England.
Gorgeous sunny England. So much sunshine this year. In actual fact, it has been a sunny day today. So, you've caught us on a good day.
Beautiful. Well, we are connecting. We haven't talked for a while, but I think of you all the time, and we are going to be teaching a workshop together in January. So I'm very excited about this.
So excited. So excited that it's going to be January, start of the year. Lots of
Yeah.
feminine energy riding into 2025.
Yes, and a total, energetic makeover. That's what we're gonna
Yeah.
be focusing
Yeah.
on. Yes. And since we last spoke, I think it was a couple years
Yeah.
ago that you were on our podcast. You were our first ever YouTube video.
I know.
You started a whole trend. But you have become a spinal energetics practitioner, and so have I. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been super interesting this year. It's been a long old year, but it's been super packed with everything that spinal energetics does. I think both of our journeys really represents how that practice can take your life into different trajectories.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, so we haven't had anybody on the podcast yet to talk about spinal energetics. So how would you describe it? If someone said to you, Zeena, I'm really curious in this spinal energetics thing. I've seen you doing it on Instagram. It looks fascinating. What is it? How do you describe it to people?
That focuses on the spine in the same way we do in Ashtanga, very, very similarly so. We focus on the idea that tension patterns that they've been created through our life are stored in the body, somewhere in the body, and our spine is a center place of our nervous system. It stems from the brain all the way down through the spinal cord, and off the spinal cord you have all these different nerves which go to all the organs, the soft tissues, and along the spine there are tension patterns that can be held, or at least that's where they're presented. And I
Yeah.
think that's very much
I like to think of the spine as the like el- electric wiring of the
it is.
body. So it's basically our entire energy system is located along the spine, and it's sending messages out and receiving messages and
Yeah.
integrating what's going on. And so without that connection, it's basically who we are on a physical sense.
And energetically, if you look at it from the sort
Yes.
of modern scientific point of view, you've got the central nervous system, you've got the peripheral nervous system, you've got the autonomic, you've got parasympathetic, you've got sympathetic. But then if you look at it from the yogic perspective, you've got the nadis, and the
Mhm.
nadis are energetic channels. And actually now we're starting to see that a lot of those patterns of nadis sit in alignment with a lot of the areas of the nervous system and even the chakras. They're definitely situated at points where you've got massive ganglions, or you've got
Yeah.
which is like big roots within the nervous system where you've got big connections of nerve bundles. That's what ganglions are, like big areas of nerves, or areas that are connected to the endocrine system, to the organs and
Mm,
the glands of the endocrine system, which are
yeah.
hormone, carriers, which are again chemical messengers as part of that energetic system. So it's
Yeah.
all
Yeah, it's
interlinked, completely interlinked. And the founder, Dr. Sarah Jane, who we've both trained with,
yeah.
describes it as, as a practice, that helps us to reconnect to ourselves
Mhm.
through our energetic fields, but reconnect to ourselves to places that we've been disconnected from, and that we've become disconnected to those areas because somewhere along our life something's happened outside of our capacity to integrate that,
Mm. Mhm.
some sort of emotional or physical experience that was too much to integrate at the time and assimilate into our consciousness. So it gets stored somewhere in the body and somewhere along the spine in the nervous system. And through
Mhm.
spinal energetics, we work to help identify where the patterns of tension lie in the body and along the spine. And through sound, we love our music. and making
Yeah.
sounds as well. We help to sort of get the brain into its sort of more sort of subconscious state, and you
Mm.
go into a sort of altered state of consciousness so that you can go beyond what our everyday way of thinking about our experiences are, and allow those bound patterns of tension to start to unwind and soften and release. And in doing so, hopefully, we can start to integrate those experiences that were part of our life, but were not necessarily the most easy to digest.
Yeah, and I love this, what you're talking about is the flow of energy, the flow of prana in the body, in these areas that maybe are blind or blocked or less, nourished or deprived
Yeah,
or
yeah,
ignored, um, lacking prana, and prana, is also consciousness, right? And so they're again interlinked. This energy, this flow of prana is also the flow of consciousness in our body. And as that flow starts to move into maybe some of those areas that are repressed or suppressed or blocked or, deficient, then it starts to open up consciousness, energy, release those blocks, and then that that flow actually opens up a well
mm,
of energy
yeah,
within us too, right?
completely.
Like when we're so blocked, we often feel really uh kind of depressed or like a lack of ambition or a lack of um I don't know, just like
Yeah,
connection
that
to
tematic
life,
kind
right?
of sluggish,
Hmm.
really unable to do much, or feeling like everything's sucking the life out of us, because something probably is sucking energy out of us. Something,
Yeah.
some sort of program in the background is running in these energetic blocks. It's taking up that energy and it's stopping us from really thriving.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then like what you're saying is also as we start to increase consciousness into these areas of our body, we start to maybe release the memory or the emotion or haven't thought about, something that might be keeping us stuck in the other layers or the other aspects of
Yeah,
ourself or these
yeah.
koshas, these energetic
Yeah.
bodies.
And that's what we work with as well within the spinal energetics. We don't work just on the physical layer of the body, we work on all the different layers. So in spinal energetics, it's called the personal, the physical, sorry, emotional, mental, personal, and sort of soul, the sort of dharmic layer of us. And we know that that all, you and I have discussed it, it connects back to the five koshas, and works in the same similar way that we think of in yogic principles. And I think as as Ashtanga practitioner and practitioners, we can identify with this so much, and it resonates so much, and it's fed so much back into my practice, having received spinal, and then also it's my practice then feeds back into it as a practitioner, understanding, especially as Mysore teachers, Ashtanga teachers, we observe the body so much of our students,
Mhm.
and you get that opportunity to do the same with people when they come as for their spinal energetic sessions. It's not necessarily a requirement to have any sort of energetic practice, whether that's yoga or, in fact, I think maybe even if you don't have it, it's you can just start to use it as a way to connect to yourself in a way that isn't so daunting as it can be, as going into a yoga room nowadays. you know, much,
Or even a meditation retreat
yeah,
or something that's feels very big and
yeah,
risky even, or, maybe you're feeling very vulnerable and you don't wanna put yourself into that kind of, uh, community kinda situation
yeah,
or public place, and I think that a spinal energetic session could be really helpful for, like, a more intimate setting to release, to unwind some of these patterns, to have someone facilitate the work to help you have those connections
yeah,
and in a way that feels very healing, and
yeah. And ultimately, we all know that science is proving more and more there is this wisdom, and that's one of the things that's integral to the science, the spinal energetics practice. There's an innate wisdom that heals us, that is there to take us into
Mm.
that state of homeostasis. That's the normal way we want to be, the way we're going to thrive. But things in life take us away from that, whether that's a physical
Mhm.
thing like a cut or an emotional experience. Um, and the practice of spinal energetics is really to help us remember how it is to come back to that state where we're working with the innate wisdom
Mm.
of the body, rather than, us needing to go externally to find that resolution. That we learn to reconnect back to that within ourselves. Um, and a bit like Ashtanga, though, no matter how much we put it into words, unless you've experienced it yourself unless you come to experience it, and every time we experience it, it is different for each of us. Um,
Mhm.
the best way to really understand what spinal energetics is, and its in its full capacity, is to really be in a session, either in a group session or in a one-to-one. But you can also watch the videos, and that can also, that has helped a lot of my clients come and say, we've watched a video and that really resonated. I'm really curious now about what that is. And I think it really, when you watch someone move, not everyone will move, but when you watch that movement start to happen, it resonates a level of truth. Like, what is
Yeah.
this? I don't know what it is, but I know it feels natural. I know it sparks something within me. I often liken it to when we chant Om. We
Mm.
can't tangibly describe what Om is, or say what it is, or have a meaning or a definition, but we know what it feels like.
Mm.
And it's the same when we watch those videos. For me, for sure, when I first watched it, it was like, I don't know what that is, but I know what it feels like inside me, and it feels like home.
Yeah. It's so I love that you bring up the ohm again too, because it's so connected to vibration. I think that's such a vital part of our healing is the music, is the sound that happens during a session, is because we're vibrational beings, right? We're just all
Yeah,
vibrating at different
exactly.
frequencies. And as you tune into the frequency of something, it allows your unconscious or subconscious to kind of come up to the light, and that starts to resolve or dissolve or unwind some of those blocks or patterns within ourselves. And we, like you say, start to remember, like, oh, I'm an integrated whole. And then we're vibrating at a different frequency. We come into the session one way and we leave another way, similar to a yoga class, but little different sometimes, because it really is so helpful to have that vibrational component. And I think in a Ashtanga class, particularly a Mysore class, if there's no music, then you're really relying on the teacher's
Mhm.
vibration, and you're co-regulating with the teacher's
For sure.
vibration and maybe their voice or sounds that they make consciously or
Yeah.
unconsciously. But when you come into that space, I think with this spinal energetics intelligence, tool belt, you can really understand that, oh, what we're doing is we're working with the spine, we're working with prana in the body, and we're vibrational beings, and we're helping to just open areas where there's lacking vibration, lacking consciousness, so that there's more consciousness
Yeah.
there, more
Yeah.
energy moving.
And it's directed
And that,
along the spine specifically. That's, as
mhm,
opposed to like Kundalini activation and other modalities. It has a real directionality. So it takes you through your layers yourself, rather than,
mhm,
haphazardly just sort of feeling into it. And I think
mhm,
that's quite similar to Ashtanga, in that the series take us through the different parts of the consciousness, and also through the different chakras, different parts of the body,
mhm,
but in a
mhm,
directed way. And I think that's where the two are very similar, that it is quite directional. It's very specific, that yes, we're looking for activation, but it's that sense of flow along the spine, rather than
mm,
just, oh, there's a bit there that needs activating. Oh, there's another bit. Oh. It's looking for that specific
mm.
movement along the spine, that fluidity along the spine, because that is essentially where, like you say, where our prana resides. And that's, if you have that access all the way along, then it can free flow throughout the rest of the body.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Free flow is a great way of explaining it. So what was it that happened for you that made you kind of resonate so deeply with this healing modality that was like, "Oh my gosh, this is my next step?"
So I think we're seeing it on Instagram. I think most people have come across, unless you're in Australia and you had access to the practitioners there. Seeing the videos on Instagram, it was resonating so deeply, and I think, if I'm honest, it spoke to something that I felt was missing in Ashtanga,
Mm.
and
How
I
so?
love my practice. Like, would just love it, but if I think it was something someone once said, that there was a lack of femininity, or lack of,
Mm.
within the Ashtanga practice. And I don't believe that that is the case. I think it's how it's taught. That's very dependent on how it's taught. You can bring those cycles and that sort of cyclical movement and that fluidity in Ashtanga if it's taught in that way. If at least if it's allowed to be present rather than it not being allowed in the room. Um,
Mhm.
but it spoke to me, that freedom of movement, of
Mm.
allowing the body to just, rather than, and I like to do that in, like, just in the sun salutations. Often it's, I remember being taught years ago, you don't move when you do your
Yeah.
first downward dogs. You don't move, you just hold them. And I understand that. I understand what we're trying to do, like that building up of energy, that building up of prana. But if we have got traumas in the body, and if we have got, things stored and stuck, we've got those samskaras, which we know we all, otherwise we wouldn't be here incarnated as physical beings without samskaras.
Mm.
Like, you can't, we're working to burn through them, but they're there. And for some of us, that just doesn't feel right. Like, your nervous system will start saying that's sore, or that just needs to move. And after a while, if that becomes a repetition, fine, that's just faffing, and you're avoiding. But we address that as well in Spinal as well. We, as you build your relationship with your client, you start to build awareness around those avoidance patterns as well. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
that fluidity and that freedom of movement, and also watching Dr. Sarah support her clients as
Mm.
well in that, like literally holding them and having that sense of care and love that we offer to our clients during that time, because it
Mhm.
is a vulnerable time. But it was that. I think it
Yeah.
was those two things: the freedom of movement, and that capacity to just let the body do what it needs to do. And it speaks to my medical background as well, that, when we come to medicine, and, we give over as patients all of our hope, and and everything that is ours over to the doctor, in some sort of hope that they'll fix us.
Mm.
All of our autonomy just goes in that moment. And to some
Yeah.
extent, I think trainings have changed now, but definitely when I was training as a dentist, especially for women, the language that was being used around female patients was very negative. Like, almost, they don't women of a certain age don't know what they're talking about, in terms of their pain, or they're just going through the change, and therefore that's, it's all in their head. So
Right.
it just didn't feel supportive, and that's one of the reasons I left, that it didn't feel that supportive. I'm glad. I think it has changed a lot now in the last 10, 15 years. But seeing Dr. Sarah also hold those clients in that time as well offered a different language for client doctor relationship, that there was a vulnerability of a patient, and that vulnerability was being seen and honored by the practitioner. And that to me
Yeah.
spoke a lot to maybe what I felt I couldn't do really as a practitioner in dentistry.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's also a nice quality that, is helpful to introduce into the Ashtanga yoga teaching method as well. I think, just speaking to this masculine feminine approach that you brought up, I think a lot of teachers really, focus on get your ass to class and like this, do this, don't do this, and like all these rules and this rigidity and this kind of force and this push and do it again, do it again. Like there's a lot of this kind of very masculine, maybe motivational kind of
Yeah,
language in the practice, which possibly at a certain stage in your practice is really helpful to kind of just get on with it and not be in your patterns or your emotional kind of stories. But also I think there needs to be this other element that you're speaking to, which is really the healing element. And it's the healing element in the Ashtanga yoga practice. And it's the healing element in a coaching relationship. It's the healing element in spinal energetics. It's the healing element in a patient doctor, in any relationship, which is the care and the compassion and the tenderness and the love.
Non
Because without that, yeah, and the non-judgment, exactly. I mean, because the love is the non-judgment, right? It brings just seeing a client in their wholeness and being able to hold their pain
mm,
or hold their emotion with them rather than trying to get rid of it or fix
mm,
it or change it
mm,
in any way, but just being with it and bringing that witness, that attention, that presence, that loving consciousness to it. It shifts things
massively.
tremendously.
Yeah. And I think I was at a
And
part in my practice where I was really stuck actually, and I had been stuck for a while, and I just was calling out for something that was going to help shift that. And I knew it wasn't coming from the Mysore room. Not to
mhm,
throw any shade
yeah,
on, on the practice or anyone, but
yeah,
I knew that that wasn't going to come out of that space for me.
mhm,
And it
yeah,
definitely
and it
came out of
yeah.
Spinal.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard, I think, sometimes too, certain teachers or also even just you get into patterns
Together,
in a
it's like a
relationships, even
co-creation.
student-teacher
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
You both
So sometimes you have to go outside of that kind of
we're like
pattern
family.
to get yeah,
You get so
exactly.
used to each other, and you get into these little grooves together, and the only way to sort of get out of that is to get out of it. And Spinal, I think, really
Yeah.
spoke to me at that time, which was okay, this is something else. But regardless of, Ashtanga to the side of it, it's still, I think, as a modality, so powerful. Both as a complement to Ashtanga, that's been my, but also as a standalone
Mhm.
modality for mind clearing and shifting and working through traumas. I think Ashtanga had done a lot for me already in terms of my working through traumas that had been buried from childhood, massively so, more than talk therapy or anything else. I have to say that for me, that typical part of dropbacks and learning to stand up from dropbacks shifted so much. But Spinal just took it to the next level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
How would you describe, like, what do you mean by the next level? Like, so you've done certain healing, you'd
Mm.
released a certain amount of trauma, you'd had the somatic kind of integration of the Ashtanga practice, but then when you had your first or your second or your third spinal energetic session, what do you feel like kinda came up or was healed, or what's that next level of healing that you were able to experience?
So I'm going to compare the two. I'm going to talk about the two. So
Yeah.
Ashtanga for me at the time was probably, I'd gone through maybe about a year, 2 years of feeling like the traumas were just getting repeated.
Mm.
They weren't
Like the pattern
pattern of the language
yeah.
around trauma was just getting revealed, but not healed. It was in the
Mhm,
practice.
mhm.
I got into a little groove of the same repetitive talk again and again, and no matter what I was doing, it just wasn't shifting. And then after my first spinal session, I literally saw the energy between the letters of those words and all that sort of monkey mind stuff, like just dissipate, and the letters just sort of fall.
Oh,
I had
wow.
such a vivid vision of that happening, and my mind then just
Mhm.
had such clarity, such profound
Wow.
clarity that I don't think I've had that clarity for a long time. Um, and that stays, and when it
Mm,
stays with you, there's no doubting the power of it. Um, and so for me, that was just a given. Like, it was so tangible, it was so visceral, it was so just physical to experience that.
mhm.
That there was no way I was not going to do the training. It was just this. Everyone has to feel this. Everyone has to know that this exists and that they have access to it, and that they don't have to live in suffering, and that it doesn't have to be, oh, you must be able to bind your marriage, yes, and you need to be able to experience this, or you must be able to do kapatasana to
Yeah.
experience this. I remember
Yeah.
I was thinking earlier on, whether it was you, whether it was Richard Freeman, I can't remember. But someone I remember listening to said, Patapi Joyce always said, practice, practice, and all is coming. And it's like, yes, you must practice because all is, practice, practice, and all is coming. And I really thought, no, practice, practice. I think he said, practice, practice, all is coming.
Yeah.
And I think he meant that. I think it wasn't a misunderstanding. I think he did mean practice, practice. All is going to come. All the pain, all the suffering, all of it is
Yeah.
coming.
Well, and it's coming whether you practice or not,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, some people can, they spend their lives avoiding it, and I get that, and I see that a lot. But
yeah, but you can't avoid life,
no,
it's gonna
it's
happen,
going to
it's
happen,
gonna
and I think especially those of us who are on the path of, the yoga path, whether it's Ashtanga or any form of yoga, you're a seeker, right? You've come to it in
yeah,
order to seek some sort of stillness, some space, some
mhm,
connection, some depth, something a little bit deeper.
yeah,
Whether that's what you're
yeah,
searching for or not, that is essentially what you're looking for. And when you get to certain layers, that of those onion layers, needing to be peeled back, I think maybe it's just sometimes also when you live in a city like London or any sort of
mm,
big city where life is just, you're hustling from one place to another, grinding, that you don't really get that much time in nature or time to connect. Something like this, again, is not another
yeah,
doing, it's not another thing to do, but you can just be and connect and go deep without
yeah,
needing to be something for someone else, without needing to perform something for someone else, whilst being
yeah,
supported in love, which, I think is like you say, is the greatest thing. We're taught, by Sarah so much that this is just, there's no judgment. There's nothing that's right or wrong. Even as practitioners, we're taught to follow our own style. We're not taught to be
mhm,
dogmatic, as
yeah,
long as we're following the main principles, and we're meant to,
yeah.
we embody who we are, and, we share that with love and compassion with our clients.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're bringing something really, like a secret helpful key to to, like, really dropping into the practice and feeling what's happening is just that time, like you're saying, to give yourself the gift of time out of the hectic day, the busy schedule, the demands, and not have to do really anything except be present to whatever is arising within yourself. And it is like meditation, except it's also kind of facilitated with some like conscious, sort of points of
Yeah,
awareness so that you're connecting into your body and not just, hopefully sleeping, although sometimes that is a result. But like, so your mind is also starting to connect your body, but in a way that's so relaxing that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make anything happen. You just have to allow whatever's going to come to the surface and witness it and be with it. And it's to me, I feel like it's kind of taking the yoga practice, which gets stuck in asana often, and starts to move it more into the pranayama because you're using the breath, and the breath is very essential to this practice because you're moving the prana, right? The extension
yeah,
or the expansion of the prana, the life force, the breath into the body, and then also into the
yeah,
pratyahara, which I think is speaking to what you're saying, where this sort of you drop into kind of a alternate state of
yeah,
consciousness that's in between awake and sleeping, and it allows these sort of
mm,
visions or unconscious kind of memories
yeah,
or dream-like
yeah.
states to kind of arise that, might just be a release of something in the body, and then they might also have a deeper message for you
For
too.
sure. I mean, I started experiencing that when I first started practicing second intermediate. Once I
Yeah.
got through the
Oh,
back
interesting.
bending sequence, I remember feeling
Mhm.
I was having these visions. I was having these experiences that at the time, however many years ago, that was the only thing around at the time that was being described like that were people who are on ayahuasca journeys. And I was, now we know we produce our own DMT and we have no science to
Mhm.
back it, but I'm pretty convinced that that's probably what we're doing in intermediate and beyond. We're working at that. at that
Mm.
level of creating altered states. And on a biochemical level, it probably, maybe Amrita is that we're creating within
Mm.
ourselves. But I remember then thinking, we're creating those altered states and having that through our own practice. Is that for everybody? Is that practice really for everyone to get on the mat 5-6 days a week, to turn their bodies into pretzels, to really focus on, going through that stage day in, day out? Maybe not. And that's why I love Spinal so much, because you can do it through asana for sure. There's no two ways about it. You can create these states definitely through the Ashtanga practice. But also for those people who don't have access for whatever reason, whether you've got young kids and you can't, get to MYSORE room every morning, 6 days a week, whatever reason you have that's not accessible to you, you can still have these experiences, because they are tricky actually to get into. It does require some work. And so that's why it's nice to have a facilitator with you to help, just
Mm.
hold that space for you to go bear witness to you, so that you can bear witness to yourself going into those states and hold that capacity for yourself. And eventually, and I think that's pretty much, the nice thing about both of them is eventually you become self-dependent on yourself to do it. But it's also nice to be supported by someone else. It's always
Yeah.
lovely to have that support from someone else.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One thing I've noticed, like working with also practitioners and integrating spinal energetics, not into the practice, but as a separate session, like a practice in its own right, is often I find sometimes like very dedicated Ashtanga practitioners become rigid in their disconnection to certain things. It's like, I really don't want to feel this. So I'm going to control everything in my life so I don't have to feel this thing or remember this thing or be with this thing that I'm avoiding. And I don't even know I'm avoiding it because I'm just controlling everything so much so I don't have to deal with it.
That's exactly what I felt. I had some sort of preconceived ideas that those that were coming for sessions, especially the Ashtangis, would be the ones that would be flapping around on the table. And
Mm-mm.
it has really surprised me that actually, no, it's been the opposite.
It's the
They are
opposite
more rigid.
because there's a
It is
disconnect.
actually through the practice you've learned. And I haven't been, we were talking, I'm such, like, I'm just so connected. Like, I'm just wear my heart on my sleeve. There's no way I can play poker. I feel everything. And so for me, there was no way that, my Ashtanga practice could ever be something that I could use to create more disconnect. The moment that I started to see that, you know, that could be an option, it was just like, no, that's not what I came to yoga for. Like, I came to yoga to feel and learn to grow
Mm.
beyond it. But yeah,
Mm.
I started to see how actually people were using it as a way to just control and be rigid and just do almost like that sort of army practice regiment, just do blindly, without connecting, without breathing, without finding the emotion, without connecting to the spiritual layers, the deeper layers, the deeper meanings. And that's was really surprising to see that on the in the spinal sessions, that there was almost like this resistance to tap into anything deeper.
Yeah. Yeah, I've noticed it too.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and it's made me question a lot of what's going on in this particular asana practice because it does feel like it's there's a pattern that gets developed when you're very committed and dedicated that is, as long as I do my practice, everything's
Mm,
okay. And that's not true.
it's not. Because how are you doing your practice? That's what really matters. What are you doing in your practice? Is it just to get to the end of the, whatever group, whatever series, whatever asana you're doing? And that's great, but you've checked out the whole way through? Like,
Yeah, and also it doesn't doing your practice doesn't fix
no.
things, and it doesn't fix you, and if you're using your practice like a way to
Mm,
fix yourself, you've missed the whole point that you don't need to be fixed in the first place, and we need to go deeper into what is it in you that feels like it needs to be
yeah,
fixed. Like, where is that coming from? But instead of looking at that deeper root, which is like you gotta feel it to heal
yeah.
it, right? Because there's going to be some pain in that. And I don't mean physical pain, I mean deep emotional
Yeah.
pain.
Whether it's that we're
Then you're just
Yeah,
bypassing.
I think
You're
I think Dr.
bypassing.
Sarah uses the right sort of language. There's nothing in same as Spinal. We're not fixing anybody. We're not healing people, but we're allowing people to come to their own space themselves where that innate wisdom takes over and that healing happens. Whether you experience, I mean, whether you re-experience the trauma again, like I have, born witness to it, or whether it just sort of, you know, goes without bearing witness to it again through the subconscious and it gets resolved internally. But I think, yeah, through the Ashtanga practice, it's really easy to just say, well, as long as I've done my 5 breaths, as long as I don't, yeah, literally, and then I'm out. And really, I think I agree with you. If that's the way people are practicing or have been taught to practice, we really missed the boat in terms of what Ashtanga really has the opportunity to offer us as practitioners,
Mm,
as a form of
mm.
medicine. Yoga chikitsa, the first
Yeah.
yoga, primary series means yoga therapy. You know,
Mhm.
it's there. The
Mhm.
language is there if we want to use it
Yeah.
properly. Like if we really want to learn how to journey to ourself, to our true self, to our true luminous self. It has to be, it's like a garden. We need to tend to those weeds. We need to prepare the soil before we can really start to see the luminous self, the flowers, growing and the beautiful garden
Mhm.
flourishing. And it's a bit icky.
Yeah.
It's a bit icky. We just need to deal with the ickiness, stay a little bit longer in the asana, soften. And that's when we start to see it shift, a bit like in spinal, it just shifts. It doesn't need to
Mhm.
become something else. It
Yeah.
shifts into who we are. It takes us away. It takes us from the person we think we are to the person we truly are.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then also, who are you without the asana? I mean, I think that that's also a very scary question for Ashtanga yoga practitioners because we start to identify with our
Yeah.
practice. And the more identified we are with the practice, the more we're missing the point that actually the practice has nothing to do with
Mm.
you.
It's a tool. It's just another tool. It's a tool
Yeah.
in. Um,
Yeah. Just like your car has nothing to do
yeah,
with you, actually.
yeah.
Your car means nothing
But
about
for
you.
some people it
And
does.
also, your asana practice means nothing about you.
No, but yeah.
And so, like, putting it in being in right relationship
Yes.
to these things, I think is really important, and I think we tend to start identifying with this practice, it's not just Ashtanga, it's any spiritual
Yeah.
practice we do. We start identifying with the
Yeah.
practice, and then we miss, actually, that's not who I am.
No.
I'm not my asana practice,
But we're hoping that
and
our
we're
practice
not
take us
free.
to that point.
Yeah, we're not free until we can actually embody that.
and detached completely from those concepts of of guilt. If you haven't been on the mat, what have you been doing?
Yeah.
Oh, you're a bad lady, you've not been practicing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been living.
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
exploring life. And the idea that my first yoga teacher always used to say to me, you should be able to practice eventually without me. That's what you should be able to do. If I've been done a good enough job,
Yeah.
you'll leave me and you won't need me ever again. And she
Yeah.
really meant that with the most, not like that sort of contrived way that, oh, they'll keep coming now that they think that they're free from me. But she really meant it that way. And it's so that you feel that you can go off and live life. You've got the tools, you've taken the tools, you don't need to be attached to that anymore. Go and live life with those tools to be free. Take it out
Mhm.
into the world, take it out into your everyday life, take it out so that you're not attached to the things that like you say, you're not your car. You're not all the things that you were conditioned to be as a child. You're not all the things that
Mhm.
society conditions you to be. You can be those things if you choose to be those things, and that's a choice. But have you used your practice to to allow discernment to be the thing that guides you rather than that rod, that
Mhm.
stick sort of mentality of you must do
Yeah.
everything, otherwise you're a bad person. No, you do what you can or what you want to if you're applying yourself to that journey of discipline. But you're not bad if you don't do it to that nth degree every day. If you're doing that journey, or every week, or at all.
Yeah. Or at all, right? Because as soon as you say, "Well, I'm better when I do this, and I'm less good when I don't do that," what if you can't do that? And also, now who are you in comparison to the person who
Yeah,
doesn't do it? Well, now you're better than them, right? You're always, like, putting
yeah.
yourself on this hierarchy of good, better, best, worst, terrible, doesn't deserve to exist. And so like, but that's just like your mind trying to, you know, place
Somewhere.
you on a
Yeah, and that comes
hierarchy
back down
that
to safe that comes
pretends.
back down to fear and safety, isn't it? If I can position
Yeah.
myself somewhere along this sort of bell curve, or this line, and
Yeah.
then somewhere is safe, this is less safe, and that's the human conditioning into believing that they need to be part
Yeah.
of a tribe, they need to, which, Ashtanga offers that culture, again, part of that tribe.
Mhm.
Um, but I also feel it does, again, it comes down to who is navigating that space, who's the sort of the navigator of that space, or the creator, should I say, of that space, is how, you have to create something that's healthy. You have to create a space that allows people to
Yeah.
be free to voice who they are, to be who they are, to exist how they are, as long as they're not causing
Mhm.
harm to other people. um
Yeah. Yeah.
or
But I think also, like, with Spinal, it's connecting us to a deeper truth of who we
I
are, which is, like, tapping into that conscious energy without
needing to
needing,
be or
like you
do
said, to
anything
do or
more.
be
Yeah.
anything
I
other
need to
than
be able to
just,
do
like,
my D
whatever.
or Kapadasana or TikToks or whatever it
Yeah.
is, or catching, to say that you're a great person, to connect to
No, you don't
yourself,
even need to, like, stand up.
or to connect to who
Like,
you truly are. I mean, you can't look. I
yeah.
think my experience of, like I say, from Ashtanga, is that it showed me a lot that was buried within my subconscious. So I think it has the capacity to do
Mhm.
that, right? But
Mhm.
I don't feel that, oh, I have to do dropbacks every day to still remember that I'm, someone who's gone
Mhm.
beyond that trauma, or I've integrated that trauma. It's integrated. Like, it's not integrated and gone and until I do my next dropback. It's integrated. Like, it's been witnessed, it's
Yeah.
been seen, and we're working with it.
Mhm.
But I feel like with
Yeah.
with Spinal, I think Ashtanga can, at some point you can get exhausted. That's the other thing. I think, with life being busy, in order to keep going to those next layers and those next levels, you expected to do more and more. The rigidity of, doing two practices together before, or two series together before you're split, like all that stuff that just depletes you, doesn't honor really that
Mhm.
that true likeness of who you are, which is luminous, which is full, which is joyful. Like, it can really get people down, I find. And it's really important that we
Yeah.
take from the Spinal group and training that just being you, sorry, is enough for you to connect to that wisdom, to that light, to that truth. And let's bring that into the Ashtanga practice as well. And, like, okay, let's, how do we modify these practices? How do we, bring more light if someone is suffering and we see
Yeah.
them suffering on the mat? How do we make this space more trauma informed? How do we allow the student to make the right choices for themselves? Um, because they will know their body better than we do. Sure, we can see
Yeah, I think that's, like, a good starting point.
we can see patterns of resistance, and we can guide people towards those deeper layers, and that's
Yeah.
nuanced. I think as teachers, it's up to us
Yeah.
to do the work to keep learning the students in front of us, and not just use that same cookie cutter sort of teaching methodology. Like, do the asana. No,
Yeah.
you can't do it. Okay, come back next tomorrow. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. No, we need to break that down and see, where is it not happening in the body. How can we help the
Yeah.
student, and how do we get to that root cause of why it's not happening, and then just let the
Mm.
students sit with that, let them explore that if they want to for themselves. And that's what we do in Spinal.
Yeah.
We do that on a bed, and you can take, someone to a certain space, but if they're tired, or if they're not wanting to go there, that's up to them. Those movements, if they don't want to move, they won't go there. They won't go there. But then if they feel like they're being held and they're being seen and that they're safe, they will start to
Mhm.
go. And then they will
Yeah.
allow their body to move how it wants to move because they understand that they're going to be supported however they are on that bed,
Mm.
however they show up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that even, like, that's kind of the deeper thing with the Ashtanga teaching that's sometimes a little bit of a poison apple, maybe. But this idea of, um, like, that there's somewhere to get to. You know, it kind of detracts from the essence of why you're doing the thing in the first place, because it's not actually to make a shape, and no shape is better than another shape. Right? It's to feel the movement of energy in the body and tune in to consciousness in your cells, in your tissues, to feel the vibration, because when you're tuned into that energy in the body, you feel that vibratory current. It has nothing to do with the shape, actually. And I think that that's the problem that happens. One of them is we get obsessed with it looking
Yeah.
a certain way. Right? "Oh, I gotta catch my heels," or "I gotta grab my toe," or "I gotta" right? And the more we're holding on to this form in a kind of a physical shape perspective, the less we're tuned into the
Mm.
energy of the person and the energy of what's happening in front of us. And that's the important part, actually, is there flow? Is there consciousness? Is there
Where have they
connection
lost the
happening?
connection? Exactly. That's where you've lost the asana.
Exactly.
That's where you've lost the
Yeah.
asana, where the connection is lost. So therefore, you know, if we're looking at it from the Ashtanga point of view, the teaching of just do, which so many people, I think a lot of teachers now have moved away from that, and rightly so.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I'm glad that that's happened in because it just really serves to be able to show the benefits of Ashtanga, but it's feeling it, right?
Mhm.
What can you
Yeah.
when do you stop feeling the asana? That's the point where you're checking out because it's too much. It's outside your window of tolerance, as we say in Spinal. The experience is now outside of your window of tolerance, so therefore you're checking out. You're not going to integrate this. It is pointless doing any more of that asana or this practice. You're better off doing much less that you can feel and you can stay connected to
Yeah.
throughout the whole practice, that vibrates you, as you say, that vibration takes you to a higher state of vibration, rather than you
Mhm.
walking away from the practice having done, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours of asana that you've been detached from after like 20 minutes. you know
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but
Totally.
I feel I feel that a lot of Ashtangis really could benefit from coming home to themselves again,
Yeah.
through the spinal practice. And I really feel that,
Yeah.
and also in the group setting that we're going to be doing, it's so similar to that Mysore energy where
Mm.
you've got the breath of your other practitioners around you and that's carrying you. You've got the breath and the sounds of your teacher, as you say, and that's carrying you. You've got the heat of the room that's carrying you. So it's,
Mhm.
this collective energy that's creating the collective field, in a
Mhm.
group spinal session, and everyone starts to feed off each other. Everyone starts to go, in the same way Mysore does the same thing, that someone next to you's just got a bit more buoyancy that carries you, or someone's giving you permission to be a
Yeah.
bit slower. They're going a bit, that's giving you the permission to go a bit slower. All of that. And I
Yeah.
feel like, and same in the Mysore room, you always get what you need from a group session.
Mhm.
You don't go any.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just so excited. I'm so excited for this workshop that we're doing in London. I'm so excited to work with you and teach with you and to
Me too.
facilitate the spinal and the breath work together and talk about all the energy layers and the koshas and the chakras and the nadis and all the philosophy, the inner, the outer, integrating the
Bring it all
two in
together.
this
Yeah.
bigger
And it was
yeah,
super
in this
fun.
bigger perspective.
And I
Yeah.
think it's been really
So,
interesting to demonstrate that this, taking that experience back for practitioners back into their practice, so they reconnect to themselves and that energetic vibration, as you say,
yeah.
and look for that back again in their practice, so they can see, okay, I've got it here, I've lost it now, okay, this is my point. This is my point of capacity, and this is what I'm honoring, this is where I'm stopping, because that's what I'm looking for, that connection. And unless I've got that
Yeah.
connection, I've stopped practicing, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that's so yeah, it's so vital to also really, and I think this is why I'm really excited to teach with you and to do this workshop with you because there needs to be such an emphasis on the students' ability to know themselves. And I think when we really give students permission to do their own work, like magic happens. And the practice, as you say, has the capacity to facilitate all of these openings and all of this awareness and this integration. But it really only happens when a student is
Mm,
empowered to have their practice be their practice and not
100%.
have it be the
Yeah.
same every day and not
No,
have it be anything at
no,
all, actually.
no.
Like, come in and take
Exactly.
shavasana,
Come in
great
and sit.
practice. Like,
Come in and sit. Sit, put your
yeah,
legs up the wall, just because that's what you
yeah.
need today. That's all you've got
Mhm.
today. Brene Brown, I remember her saying in a talk bit about her and her husband, they come together at the end of the day, and if but they say how much they've got percentage wise. If one's got 20% and one's got 20%, that's only 40%. Okay, we need to go and do something else because we haven't got 100% yet. If one's got 80 and one's got 20,
Yeah,
okay, I'll carry you for today. What have you got? If you're turning up
yeah,
20% in your tank, you can't do more than sitting or breathing or shavasana, or
yeah,
maybe a few sun
yeah.
salutations, depending on where you are. But don't, and that's how I
Mhm,
definitely teach. That's how our Shala room works. You turn up and you tell me
mhm.
what you can do today. You tell me. I don't
Yeah,
tell you what you can do or can't do. You show up and you tell me what you can do, and we work with it.
yeah, and I think that's so powerful because there's so much empowerment in showing up for yourself, right? And just having a space, a room, a facilitator, a teacher to hold that space, that container for you to come and do your work.
And I
And whatever that looks like for you on any given day, just to show up for yourself and like somatically process. Because I mean, we know the wisdom of somatically releasing trauma, somatically releasing emotions, somatically integrating ourselves. There's real wisdom there.
completely,
Um,
that's this
yeah, and it goes kind of yeah, it goes kind of backwards or not backwards, but maybe backwards when we start to make like the process of somatically releasing or somatically integrating some kind
another
of
doing.
contortionist exactly project that we need to
Yeah,
succeed at and win at and achieve at, right? Because now instead of reducing the stress and the trauma and bringing us back into ourselves and back into wholeness, it's actually taking us out.
completely. And I actually find that just having, my students know that they can just turn up. What I've noticed
Yeah.
is that they actually they have the capacity to do more. And that's not the intention, but I've just noticed
Mhm.
that that's actually what happens is that when you say enough, and not always, but just do what you can, take it
Yeah.
easy. And then by the end of it, they have more energy,
Yeah.
and it's just the
Yeah.
the fact I think being seen, being heard, is so
Mhm.
important for so many, especially I don't know about for everybody. I was going to say especially for women, but
Yeah.
just because I happen to teach a lot of women, but when women are being the ones seeing and hearing everyone else in their family, pets, children, husbands, you know, it's important for them to be seen and heard as well. And when they come
Mhm.
up onto their mat, that's their space. That really is for some of them their only space in their day. And
Yeah.
that cannot be a space where they're not seen and heard again. It has to be a space where they're completely
Yeah.
seen, heard, and from my perspective, held. That's my job in
Yeah.
that room, to hold that
Yeah.
space and hold them as
Ugh.
people that are being seen and heard. So to go and sit there and
Yeah.
challenge them again,
Yeah, like, sometimes you just don't need to be
no.
challenged anymore. Like, sometimes life is just challenging enough, right?
Yeah,
You're like, "I just need a space to, just not be challenged, just to, feel and breathe and move and just have it be easy. Like, let it be fucking easy, please.
I will say that sometimes, and my students will be saying, yeah, but she does push her sometimes,
Of course, but that's the easy part. Pushing someone, challenging someone, that's the
But
easy
it's
part.
knowing when to
Like,
do it as well. It's like, okay, I can see there's doubt there, and the only reason we're not going with it is just because there's doubt or fear, not because you're exhausted
yeah,
and that's when I'm like, come on, you've got this. We can work our way through this.
yeah,
And it's that positive encouragement, that positive holding, which, Sarah
yeah.
teaches as well, that, through the spinal, those same patterns can come up. Spinal, again, is not the same like
Mhm,
Ashtanga. Neither of them are panaceas. The same patterns come up, patterns of resistance,
mhm.
avoidance. We're human. We're very clever at doing that, right? Because that's how it keeps
Yeah.
us in survival mode. It keeps us alive, to avoid those patterns of pain and trauma and fear. So
Mhm.
when we avoid those, we start to go back into those sort of patterns of creating more of that around us. And Spinal is there to help us go beyond that as well. So, we'll
Yeah,
hold you as well
yeah.
when you're going into those patterns of avoidance. You'll be held and supported because it is hard to go beyond that. If we were able to do it on our own, we would have done it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's helpful to have a facilitator, an outside perspective, someone to just, like, see you,
Yeah.
right? We know the power of being seen, right? It changes the observer, and it also changes
Absolutely.
the
Yeah, exactly.
observed, and so bringing consciousness into a space, into a relationship, into a conversation, into an asana practice, into a spinal energetic session, that consciousness, that intention and attention is transformative. That's what makes the change, not the
It's
doing.
exactly what you say. It's the word you use, relationship. If you have an
Yeah.
observer and the observed, one cannot exist like without the other. We know that through
Mhm.
through quantum mechanics and quantum physics now. It is relationship. It is that thing that holds the two together. It's that vibration that holds the two in space together that makes all of
Mhm.
this happen, that change, the growth, the existence.
Yeah. Yeah, and another word for that is yoga. The union of the 2 together.
And yeah, yeah. It's very
Yeah,
healthy.
we've come full
New way to start
circle.
the year. New experience. A lot of people, I think, that haven't experienced it so
Yeah.
far. And I yeah, I really do feel that there are, so many benefits, especially those that practice Mysore style, where you're used to exploring your energetic practice.
Yeah,
Experiencing
yeah,
it in a way that's not, that doesn't require those shapes to be made is so freeing. And I've only just been, it's
yeah.
been so freeing, and it's just made my practice stronger. It's just really reinforced my practice so much more.
Yeah, and I think also tuning in because sometimes I mean, it's easy I think as a practitioner to get stuck in the physical body because you feel it so strongly. Like, "Oh, my hips are tight. Oh, I got a pain in my back. Oh, my neck is sore."
Yeah,
Like you feel the
yeah,
physical self so strongly. Of course, it's gonna be the thing that we tend to
yeah,
focus on because it's the first thing into our
yeah,
awareness. But I think integrating, as you say, these 2 practices where you're really taking the time to almost take the physical body out
yeah.
of it and just drop in to the energetic body and feel your energy, it's
So
powerful. It
powerful.
changes your physical practice
Completely.
because instead of just feeling your physical body, you start to tune in. It becomes like everything, a little
Yeah.
path, right? You start to know, like, oh, now I'm feeling my energetic body. Oh, there it is. I feel the energy rather than the physical sensation.
I couldn't agree with you more. What I was experiencing for a long time, where the trauma was just getting repeated. Every time I would get a new asana, and there was obviously the period of adaptation to that. There's either going to be muscle pain or some sort of physical pain as you're growing into the new asana, as you're taking more weight through balances. My what the language that was going on was, oh, this is painful. It was fear. So there's something wrong. So
Mhm,
avoid it.
mhm.
So instead of
Yeah.
trying to get stronger with those asanas and just like owning them, there was a fear kicking in. What was really
Mhm,
going on was just fear of growth, fear of growing into who I
mhm.
really am. And through Spinal, what then happened was this language completely flipped without any sort of attempt to change it. It just changed into like, you're just putting more weight on, like you're carrying more weight. You're just growing stronger.
Mm-hmm.
That's all this is. You're just getting stronger. And that's great. Like, don't be afraid of it. Nothing bad is happening. You're just getting stronger. And you're like, who doesn't want that? Like, that's what you're here for, no? That's what you're doing this for. Like, you're flexible as I was all, for me, my practice is always flexible, so flexible. But the strength was what I needed to grow. But there was some fear around that. We can talk about that over the weekend, but we can explore that. But there was fear around growing, and then Spinal completely broke that down just from a few sessions on the bed. And it's amazing how it changes it without you needing to question it. Changes the language in your brain to a more positive, a more growth sort of focused, more expansive language that doesn't hold you back anymore, that doesn't stop you from experiencing who you truly are. But you don't need to analyze how that came. There's no need or desire to want to understand where it comes from, because you just know that's who you always were.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's going to be so good. Okay, so if people want to come and join us on the weekend, we will be at Still Point Yoga January 25th
26th.
and 26th, right? Okay, so January 25th and 26th. And if you want to practice Mysore with me 3 days before, you can come practice Mysore with me. And Zeena and I will also be doing Mysore on those mornings, on the weekend mornings as well. Yeah, it's going to be a full immersive time of energy, asana, breathing, all the things.
Yeah. Still Point in London Bridge. For me, it's a bit of a homecoming to come back there and teach. It's where I studied dentistry. So where I was at
Amazing.
uni. So it's going to be a really exciting time to come back there and share this with you and Scott as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, very excited. So I can't wait to see you in person.
Me too. I can't wait to see you next year.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Well, hey, I hope you enjoyed that conversation and learned something new and picked up a few interesting points and are feeling curious to try spinal energetics. I will put links to where you can connect with myself and Zeena in the show notes. And also, I hope that you are feeling as excited about our upcoming workshop as I am and she is. We will be meeting at Still Point Yoga, London Bridge, Saturday, January 25th and 26th. And you can also join me for Mysore practice before that, January 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th. I think actually January 22nd, maybe I'm starting. But you can find all the information at Still Point Yoga, and please sign up. Please come and practice. It would be so great to work with you and connect with you in person. We are going to have an amazing time together, and I can't wait to see you there. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.